On my 70th birthday, rain soaked through my coat as I stood outside the restaurant where my wife and I had celebrated every milestone for 40 years. The manager had just refused me with an apologetic smile and words that left me frozen. "Your daughter called ahead, sir. She said you've been unwell lately, that we shouldn't seat you." I didn't understand. I wasn't unwell, or was I standing there alone questioning myself? I had no idea that a stranger's kindness that night would reveal a betrayal so calculated, so devastating. It would shake everything I thought I knew about my family. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Before we go any further, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever trusted someone completely only to feel quietly shut out of your own life? Also, please note, this story includes dramatized elements for educational and storytelling purposes. Names and settings may be altered, but the message shared here is meant to be thoughtful and helpful. On the day I turned 70, I found myself standing in the rain outside the Lexington Room, my wool coat heavy with water, watching other people celebrate inside the restaurant where my wife and I had spent 4 decades marking the milestones of our lives. Warm amber light spilled from the windows into the October evening. Through the misted glass, I could make out families raising glasses, couples leaning close over flickering candles, and a small boy blowing out birthday candles as his grandparents clapped and laughed. It looked like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting, safe, intimate, the kind of scene that made you believe families always stayed whole. I was no longer part of that picture. I'd booked the reservation 3 weeks earlier, the same afternoon I left my doctor's office. Doctor. Harrison had smiled as he flipped through my chart and told me my mind was clear. My heart strong, in better shape than most men, 10 or 15 years younger. Walking out of that appointment, I felt something unfamiliar after years of grief, the faint possibility that life might still hold room for rebuilding after Marianne's death. That hope had led me to call the Lexington Room and ask for table 14, the one near the stone fireplace. Marianne always insisted on that spot. "It's warmer there," she used to say, though I suspected she simply loved watching the flames dance while we ate. Now, standing in the cold, I reached into my jacket and pulled out my wallet. Behind my license was a faded photograph from 1976, Marianne and me on our wedding day. She wore a modest white dress with lace sleeves. I wore a borrowed suit that never quite fit. We were standing outside Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, smiling like two people who had somehow won more than they deserved. In many ways we had. 48 years, I murmured to the photo. Happy anniversary. The rain intensified, tapping insistently against my shoulders. I tucked the photograph away, straightened my posture, and walked toward the entrance. When the heavy oak door opened, warmth enveloped me, the scent of herbs and garlic, the soft clatter of cutlery, the low hum of conversation. For a fleeting moment, I imagined Marianne beside me, her fingers sliding into mine the way they always had when we stepped into places like this. Then I saw Gregory Stevens, the matriarch, approaching, with a look that tightened something deep in my chest. "Mr. Hawthorne," he said gently, too gently, "I'm afraid there's been some confusion." Confusion. I looked past him toward table 14, now occupied by a young couple sharing oysters. "I have a reservation, 7:30. Edmund Hawthorne." Gregory folded his hands, a posture I recognized well, the stance of someone preparing to deliver unwelcome news. "Your daughter contacted us this morning, sir. She explained your situation." My situation. My pulse quickened. "What situation?" "She mentioned you've been having some difficulties lately. Memory-related concerns." His eyes briefly flicked toward the hostess who stood nearby, pretending not to listen. "She was worried you might forget making or canceling reservations." The words struck hard. "I don't have memory problems. I made that reservation weeks ago. I did not cancel it. I understand how upsetting this must be." Upsetting. My voice rose before I could stop it. A few diners glanced our way. I lowered my tone, clinging to what little dignity I felt slipping away. "It's my birthday. I came here to eat dinner. This is the restaurant where my wife and I celebrated every anniversary we ever had." The hostess stepped forward, her expression carefully sympathetic. "Mr. Hawthorne, your daughter seemed genuinely concerned. She mentioned episodes. Moments where you might become distressed if things didn't go as planned." Episodes, I repeated the word, bitter on my tongue. "I don't have episodes." Gregory placed a light hand on my arm, the way one steadies someone fragile. "Perhaps it would be best if you went home and spoke with your daughter. I'm sure she'd want reassurance that you're safe." Safe. As though I were a child who'd wandered too far from home. I pulled my arm away. I'd like to speak to the manager. I am the manager, he replied evenly. And given what we've been told, I can't seat you tonight. It wouldn't be appropriate. Inappropriate. At the place where I'd once knelt and asked Marianne to marry me. For a long moment I stood there aware of the eyes around me. An elderly man causing discomfort. A man whose own daughter had warned others about his supposed confusion. I understand, I said at last. My apologies for the trouble. Then I turned and stepped back into the rain. The door shut quietly behind me, sealing in warmth and laughter. I stood on the sidewalk, rain soaking through my coat, and pulled out my phone. My hands trembled as I scrolled to Evelyn's name. Voicemail. It's Dad, I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. I was at the Lexington room. They told me you called, said I was confused. I don't understand what's happening, Evelyn. Please call me. I ended the call and stared at the screen. It stayed dark. Inside the restaurant, the little boy from earlier wrapped his arms around his grandfather. The old man's face lit up with joy, and something inside me fractured. That was supposed to be my evening, my family, my celebration. Instead, I stood alone in the rain, questioning my own mind. Had I forgotten something? Had I canceled the reservation and simply not remembered? The doctor said I was fine, but doctors could be wrong. Maybe grief had masked things even from me. Since Marianne died, there had been silence, long nights, conversations with photographs. Maybe that wasn't as normal as I wanted to believe. Maybe Evelyn saw something I couldn't. Cold seeped into my bones as the rain soaked deeper. I should go home, I told myself. Warm up. Try to retrace my steps. Figure out what I'd done to make my own daughter think I needed intervention. I turned toward my car, and then I heard a voice behind me. Sir, are you okay? The hand on my shoulder was steady and warm. I turned to find a man in his mid-30s, dark hair, wet from rain leather jacket, dripping eyes holding genuine concern. Beside him stood a little girl in a yellow raincoat dotted with cartoon bees holding a small umbrella. She looked up at me with Marianne's eyes, that particular shade of hazel that changed with the light. I'm fine, I said automatically. The man didn't move his hand. I saw what happened in there. That wasn't right. He gestured toward the restaurant. My daughter and I have a table inside. We'd be honored if you'd join us. I stiffened. That's very kind, but I couldn't impose. It's your birthday, the little girl said suddenly. Daddy heard that man say so, and nobody should be alone on their birthday. That's a rule. My throat tightened. It's your birthday, too. She shook her head, rain flying from her hood. No, silly. It's your birthday. I make the rules in our house. Something in her father's wry smile broke through my resistance. Or maybe it was the way she looked at me, as if whether I came to dinner mattered more than anything. All right, I heard myself say. If you're sure. We're sure, he said. Gregory Stevens's face when he saw us was a masterpiece of barely concealed shock. His professional mask slipped for just a second before he nodded at my companion. Mr. Brooks, your table is ready. So, this stranger was a regular. That explained Gregory's restraint. We followed a waitress, Willa, according to her name tag, to a corner booth by the fireplace. The warmth thawed my frozen hands as I slid into the leather seat. The girl bounced in beside me while her father took the opposite side. See, she said, beaming. Much better than standing in the rain. I couldn't argue. I'm Lucas Brooks, the man said, extending his hand across the table. This is my daughter Clara, and you are Edmund Hawthorne. His grip was firm, self-sufficient. I recognized it because I had the same handshake, the kind you develop when you've had to be strong for too long. Clara had pulled out crayons and was already drawing on her placemat. Do you have grandkids, Mr. Edmund? The question hit me like a punch. No, I don't. That's sad, she said matter-of-factly. Grandpas are important. Do you fish? Clara, Lucas said gently. It's all right, I interrupted. I used to fish with my wife before she... I stopped. Clara looked up. Her crayon paused. Did she go to heaven? I nodded. Yes, 3 years ago. I'm sorry, she said, and the simple sincerity made my eyes sting. Heaven's nice, though. That's where my mama is. Daddy says she's watching over us. I glanced at Lucas, saw the tightness around his eyes. Clara's mother left when Clara was 2 weeks old, he explained quietly. We haven't heard from her since. 7 years. He'd been raising this bright, compassionate child alone for 7 years. That must be difficult, I said. We manage. His tone made it clear he didn't want to dwell on it. What brings you to the Lexington room tonight? I looked down at my wedding ring. My wife and I used to come here for every anniversary, 40 years worth of celebrations at table 14. I gestured toward where the young couple sat. I thought being here would make me feel closer to her. And instead, they turned you away. Lucas said, his jaw tightening. We ordered pasta for Clara steak, for Lucas salmon for me. As the food came and conversation flowed, I found my appetite returning. Lucas told me about his work as a software developer, working remotely so he could be home with Clara. Clara chattered about second grade, her teacher Mrs. Morrison, her best friend Sophie, who had a hamster named Cheerio. She had Marianne's laugh bright and uninhibited, the kind that made everyone smile. And she had dark hair almost black that fell in waves around her face. Just like, number one, I was imagining things. Grief made you see connections that weren't there. But then Clara smiled at something Lucas said, and I saw it again, that particular tilt of her head, the way her nose crinkled the dimple in her left cheek, but not her right. Evelyn used to smile exactly like that. Mr. Edmund, Clara's voice pulled me back. I made something for you. She pushed her placemat across the table. On it, drawn in crayon, was a stick figure man and a stick figure girl holding hands. Above them, in careful letters, Happy Birthday, Grandpa Edmund. My vision blurred. Clara, this is the best gift anyone's given me in a very long time. You can keep it, she said proudly. As the meal ended and Willa brought the check, which Lucas insisted on paying, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years, connected. These strangers had reminded me that kindness still existed. Lucas pulled a business card from his wallet. I mean what I said. If you need anything, and I mean anything, please call. I took the card, Lucas Brooks Software Development, followed by a phone number. Portland, Oregon. Thank you, I said. Both of you, you've made a difficult night bearable. Clara hugged me fierce and quick. I hope you have lots more birthdays, Grandpa Edmund. I watched them walk away, Lucas's hand on Clara's shoulder, heads bent together as they laughed. The picture of a complete family, even with a missing piece. And as they disappeared into the rain, I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara's smile reminded me of someone. Not just anyone, but someone I'd lost long ago. Someone who used to smile exactly like that, before the world made her forget how. Dawn found me at my kitchen table with Clara's drawing spread before me and coffee growing cold in my hands. I'd given up on sleep around 4 when the questions became louder than the silence. I climbed to my study and pulled the photo albums from the top shelf, the ones I'd hidden after Marianne died. The one labeled Evelyn Childhood felt heavy in my hands. On the 3rd page, Evelyn's 7th birthday party. Yellow dress dotted with sunflowers, chocolate cake in her hands, dark hair falling in waves. And that smile dimple in her left cheek, but not her right nose, crinkling head, tilted just so. Clara's smile. Exactly. I turned pages with trembling fingers. 6 years old, 8, 9, all showed that same face, those same features I'd seen last night in a little girl wearing a bee-covered raincoat. The resemblance wasn't similar, it was identical. Another photograph, Evelyn at 7, sitting on my shoulders at a 4th of July parade, completely trusting I'd never let her fall. When had we lost that? When had my daughter stopped looking at me with trust? I knew the answer. The day Marianne collapsed in the garden. Massive stroke. Sudden, mercifully quick. But nothing merciful about the hole it left. Marianne had been the glue holding our family together. Without her, Evelyn and I became strangers, speaking different languages. Evelyn moved out 6 months after the funeral. We had dinner once a month, stiff affairs discussing business and weather, and everything except what mattered. I told myself she needed space to grieve. But what if I'd been wrong? My phone buzzed. Lucas's text. Hope you're feeling better this morning. Clara wanted me to make sure you got home safely. I typed back, I'm fine. Thank you again. His response. Anytime. Clara's already planning your next birthday party. Despite everything, I smiled. Then I pulled up Evelyn's contact and hit call. Straight to voicemail. Again. It's Dad, I said. We need to talk. Call me back. The doorbell rang before I could say more. Raymond Foster stood on my porch holding a casserole dish. Morning, Ed. Martha's lasagna. We settled at the kitchen table with coffee. Raymond talked about the Seahawks until he said something that made me freeze. Evelyn stopped by yesterday, looking for you. I set down my cup carefully. She was here around 3, said she'd been trying to call. He studied me. She seemed worried, asked if I'd noticed anything off about you lately. Off? Her word. Wanted to know if you'd been forgetful, if you'd said or done anything unusual. Raymond paused. I got the impression she was hoping I'd say something different. The coffee turned to acid. What did you tell her? The truth that you seem sharp as always. His eyes narrowed. Phil, what's going on? If someone wanted to make it look like I was incompetent, what would they need? And Basadispayaris. Jesus! Raymond leaned back. Medical records, testimony from people close to you, documentation of confusion and memory loss, poor judgment. He fixed me with a hard look. Your own daughter? Maybe I'm paranoid. Are you? I didn't answer. The restaurant incident, the questions to neighbors, the careful construction of a narrative about my declining mental state, it all fit too perfectly. After Raymond left, I pulled out Lucas's business card. Portland, Oregon. Clara's mother left 7 years ago. 7 years ago was 2017, the same year Evelyn took that sabbatical from Hawthorne Holdings. 8 months of finding herself. She'd come back different, harder, colder, more focused on business. What if she hadn't been traveling? What if she'd been in Portland? I opened my laptop and searched Portland, Oregon mother abandons baby 2017. The third result, a human interest story from the Oregonian, March 2017. Single father raises newborn after mother's disappearance. The article was short. A young software developer named Lucas Brooks, whose girlfriend left 2 weeks after giving birth. The girlfriend's name, Elena Brooks, though the reporter noted Brooks might not have been her real last name. Elena, not Evelyn. But the timeline matched. February 2017, when Evelyn would have been in Portland. The article said Elena claimed to be a 22-year-old college student, though Lucas suspected she was older. Evelyn was 30 in 2017. I sat back heart-hammering. The photo album still lay open on the table, 7-year-old Evelyn grinning with that dimpled smile. I looked from the photograph to Lucas's business card, to the newspaper article on my screen. The resemblance was undeniable. The timeline matched perfectly. And the woman who had abandoned Lucas and Clara was exactly the age Evelyn would have been, in exactly the city where Evelyn had found herself. Elena Brooks, Evelyn Margaret Hawthorne. Even the initials were almost the same. I thought about Evelyn's coldness these past 3 years, her sudden interest in my health, my memory, my confusion. The canceled reservation at the Lexington Room. Raymond's revelation that she'd been asking neighbors about my mental state. She wasn't just stealing from me or trying to gain control of my assets. She was trying to bury a secret. A 7-year-old secret with dark hair and a dimpled smile who called strangers Grandpa without hesitation. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. I needed more than suspicions and circumstantial evidence. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what Evelyn had been doing, what she was planning, how deep this deception went. And I needed to know if Lucas had any idea who Elena really was. But first I needed to see what else my daughter might have left behind, what other evidence she'd planted or stolen, what other pieces of this puzzle were hidden in my own home. I looked at the clock, 11:47 a.m. The whole morning had vanished, while I'd been lost in photographs and newspaper archives and terrible realizations. I stood up, my knees protesting, and looked around my study, at the filing cabinets full of decades of documents, at the safe hidden behind Mary Ann's favorite painting, at the security camera mounted discreetly in the corner. If Evelyn had been building a case against me, there would be evidence. Medical records I'd never seen, forged documents, things missing that should be here. The timeline matched. The resemblance was undeniable. And if I was right about what I suspected, then everything I thought I knew about my daughter was a lie. Suspicion was one thing, proof was another. I spent the rest of Saturday trying to convince myself I was wrong, that the coincidences meant nothing. But by 2 a.m, lying awake in the dark, I knew I couldn't wait until daylight. I had to know what else Evelyn had been hiding. I went downstairs to my study, the house silent except for the creak of floorboards. If Evelyn had been building a case to have me declared incompetent, there would be evidence. And if she'd been careful enough to cancel my restaurant reservation and question my neighbors, she'd left a trail. I moved to the wall safe, hidden behind a painting of the Columbia River Gorge, Mary Ann's favorite. My hands shook as I spun the combination. Inside were the documents I'd organized for years. Property deeds, stock certificates, insurance policies, bank statements. The statements should have been stacked neatly, one for each month. Instead, the folder was thin. I spread them across my desk. January, February, then a gap. June, July, August. September was too recent. March, April, and May were missing. 3 months gone. And those were the months when I'd started feeling foggy, when I'd begun doubting my own memory. I called the bank's 24-hour service line. After security questions, the representative returned. Mr. Hawthorne, there are 2 authorized users yourself, and Evelyn Hawthorne added 6 months ago with full privileges. My stomach dropped. I didn't authorize that. Our records show you came into the branch. Your signature is on file. I hadn't been to the bank in over a year, not since Mary Ann died. Any unusual withdrawals, I asked. There have been several transfers to another institution, approximately $85,000 over 4 months. $85,000, my money taken while I trusted her. I ended the call and sat in the dark, breathing slowly, then went to the master bathroom. The medicine cabinet held the usual bottles, blood pressure pills, vitamins, allergy medication. But pushed to the back was one I didn't recognize. Lorazepam, 2 milligrams. Take 1 tablet as needed for anxiety. The prescription was in my name, filled 2 months ago at a pharmacy I'd never visited. Prescribing physician, Dr. Brady Thornton. The bottle was nearly empty. I had never taken a single pill. I'd never seen it before. Then I remembered. 2 months ago, Evelyn had started bringing dinner twice a week. You shouldn't eat alone, Dad, she'd said. Thoughtful meals, careful portions. And after every dinner, I'd felt exhausted, barely able to climb the stairs. I'd blamed age and grief. But what if it hadn't been natural? I went to Mary Ann's dressing room and opened the antique jewelry box from her grandmother. Inside were the pieces she cherished, pearls, a garnet ring, the diamond earrings from our anniversary. The velvet compartment where the Victorian diamond brooch belonged was empty. That brooch was worth at least $50,000. I knew it had been there 3 months ago. I was certain. My hands shook as I returned to the study and opened the home security system. The cameras stored footage for 90 days. I scrolled through the nights. 6 weeks ago, 11:22 p.m. The footage jumped to 11:47, 25 minutes missing. 5 weeks ago, 6:43 p.m., 8 minutes gone. 3 weeks ago, 2:17 a.m., 15 minutes erased. Someone had been in my house deleting evidence, and I knew who. I stared at the screen, sick with clarity. My daughter, the child I raised, the woman I trusted, had been stealing from me, drugging me, and constructing a story of my mental decline. But why go this far? If she wanted money, I would have given it. If she wanted the company, we could have planned it. Unless it wasn't just about money, unless it was about stopping me from asking questions, from discovering what she'd done 7 years ago in Portland, from finding out about Clara. My gaze fell to the wastebasket. On top was a document I didn't remember throwing away. Psychiatric evaluation, confidential. Patient Edmund James Hawthorne, age 70. Evaluating physician Brady Thornton, MD. It diagnosed early-stage dementia and recommended immediate guardianship. I searched the Oregon Medical Board. No results. I called hospitals in Portland. No Dr. Brady Thornton had ever existed. The evaluation was a forgery. Sitting there, I finally understood Evelyn's plan. She wasn't just stealing money. She was building a legal case to have me declared incompetent to take control of everything I owned, to put me somewhere I couldn't interfere. And Clara was the reason. Sweet Clara, who'd called me Grandpa Edmund, who'd drawn me that picture, she was the secret Evelyn needed buried. Proof of a past, she'd erased a child, she'd abandoned a lie she'd lived for 7 years. If I uncovered the truth, if I connected Elena to Evelyn, everything would collapse. She needed me silenced, controlled, declared unfit before I could expose it all. My daughter was trying to destroy me. And at last I understood why. The realization settled slowly like ice in my chest. Every doubt I'd brushed aside, every moment I'd laughed at myself for forgetting, had been carefully engineered. Evelyn had layered deception on deception, trusting I would question myself before I ever questioned her. Grief made me vulnerable. Loneliness made me trusting. She had used both. What frightened me most wasn't the money or the jewelry. It was how close she'd come to succeeding. Another month and the paperwork would have been filed, my voice dismissed as confusion. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being robbed of it. And now that I knew the truth, I also knew survival depended on patience, evidence, and choosing the right moment to act. Carefully. By Sunday morning, I'd made my decision. I couldn't do this alone. Whatever Evelyn was planning, whatever she'd done 7 years ago, Lucas deserved to know the truth. And I needed to know if my suspicions were right. At 9 o'clock, I pulled out the business card he'd given me at the restaurant and dialed before I could second-guess myself. He answered on the third ring. Hello. Lucas, it's Edmund Hawthorne from the other night. Oh, Mr. Hawthorne, is everything all right? Oh, the moastom besend. No, I said, and heard how rough my voice sounded. No, it's not. I need to ask you something about Clara's mother. The silence on the other end stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then, Can we meet in person? Yes, please. There's a coffee shop downtown, Riverside Coffee on 3rd Street. 10:30 gases alights. I'll be there. I arrived 15 minutes early, but Lucas was already waiting at a corner booth, hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. He looked like he hadn't slept either, dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight with tension. He stood when he saw me. Mr. Hawthorne? Edmund, please. I slid into the seat across from him. A waitress came by. I ordered coffee I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. When she left, Lucas leaned forward. Clara's with a babysitter, he said quietly. I didn't want her hearing this conversation, whatever this conversation is. I nodded. Smart. You said you wanted to ask about her mother. I took a breath. When did Elena leave? His jaw tightened. February 2017, 2 weeks after Clara was born. He said it like he'd said it 1,000 times before, to doctors and social workers and curious strangers. Valentine's Day, actually. Clara was born on Valentine's Day. Elena left on the 28th. 2 weeks. She'd stayed with her newborn daughter for exactly 2 weeks, then vanished. Did she ever tell you her full name? Lucas's eyes narrowed. Elena Brooks. At least that's what she said. But I always suspected Brooks wasn't her real last name. She was cagey about her past. No family photos, no social media, always paid cash. I thought maybe she was running from something. An abusive ex, maybe, or family trouble. He paused. Why are you asking? Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. I'd spent an hour last night selecting the right pictures, recent ones of Evelyn at company events, clear shots of her face. I turned the phone toward Lucas. Do you recognize this woman? He looked down at the screen. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his face went completely white. The mug in his hands trembled, coffee sloshing over the rim onto the table. That's her, he whispered. That's Elena. The words hung in the air between us. The coffee shop noise, the hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of other customers, the clink of cups faded to nothing. There was only Lucas's stricken face and the photograph of my daughter on the screen between us. That's my daughter, I said, Evelyn Hawthorne. Lucas stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Several people turned to look. He didn't seem to notice. His hands were shaking, and his voice when he spoke was barely controlled. Your daughter. He wasn't asking. He was processing the pieces falling into place. Your daughter abandoned Clara. Your daughter is the woman who left my 2-week-old baby in the middle of the night with a goddamn note. I didn't know, I said quickly. I swear to God, Lucas, I had no idea until Friday night. When I saw Clara, when I saw her smile, I thought she looked familiar, but I couldn't. I stopped, tried to collect myself. Evelyn disappeared for 8 months in 2016 and 2017. She said she was traveling, finding herself. She came back different, colder, more focused on the business. I thought it was grief my wife had died, and Evelyn and I weren't handling it well. Lucas sat back down slowly like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. She told me she was 22, a student at Portland Community College. We met at a coffee shop near campus. We dated for 6 months before, he gestured vaguely. Before Clara. She was 30, I said. In 2016, Evelyn was 30 years old. She lied about her age, her name, her whole life. Jesus Christ. Lucas put his head in his hands. I spent 7 years trying to find her. 7 years of Clara asking why her mama didn't love her. 7 years of wondering what I'd done wrong, what I could have said or done differently to make her stay. He looked up at me, and his eyes were blazing. And she was just, what, playing house, slumming it with a poor software developer before going back to her real life, or seed. I don't know what she was doing, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out. The waitress brought my coffee. Neither of us acknowledged her. When she left, Lucas spoke again, his voice quieter now, but no less intense. Clara is your granddaughter. Yes. And Evelyn, your daughter, has been pretending for 7 years that Clara doesn't exist. Yes. Why? It was the question I'd been asking myself all night. I don't know, but I think... I stopped considering how much to tell him, then decided he deserved all of it. I think she's trying to make sure I never find out about Clara. She's been building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent, forged medical documents, drugged my food stolen from me. If she can get conservatorship, she controls everything, my money, my company, my ability to ask questions. Lucas stared at me. She's trying to have you declared incompetent so you won't discover you have a granddaughter. I think so. Clara is evidence of a past Evelyn erased. If I started asking questions, if I connected the dots, I met his eyes. She needed to silence me first. We sat in silence, the weight of it crushing. Around us, the coffee shop continued its Sunday morning routine. People laughed, ordered pastries, made plans for the day. Normal life happening while our worlds crumbled. Finally, Lucas spoke. His voice was different now, harder determined. If Clara is your granddaughter, then why is your daughter pretending she doesn't exist? It was the question that changed everything. Because now, we both knew whatever Evelyn's reasons for abandoning Clara, they were worth destroying her own father to keep hidden. We left the coffee shop separately, but an hour later, Lucas was at my front door. I need to see it, he said. The evidence, everything you found. I led him to my study where documents from last night were still spread across my desk. Lucas stood in the doorway, taking it in the open safe, scattered papers, the prescription bottle. Then he walked to the desk and started reading. I watched him examine the bank statements with missing months, the lorazepam bottle, the fake psychiatric evaluation. His jaw clenched tighter with each piece. Finally, he looked up. She's building a case to prove you're incompetent. I know, but why go to these lengths? He gestured at the evidence. If she wanted money, there are easier ways. That's what I can't figure out. If she just needed money, I would have given it to her. This is scorched earth. Lucas was quiet, thinking. Then, how much is Hawthorne Holdings worth? Conservatively, $15 million, with real estate and investments closer to 20. He let out a low whistle. And if you were declared incompetent, with conservatorship, probably Evelyn. She's my only child, she already works there. Control the company, control your assets, control your ability to ask questions. He picked up the lorazepam bottle. And if you're drugged and confused, no one would believe you if you tried to fight it. And Clara is a loose end. His voice was flat fury underneath. Proof of Evelyn's past. If you discovered Clara exists, she needed you silenced first. We stood in silence, the weight settling over us. We need proof, I said finally. Real proof Clara is my granddaughter. Something that would hold up legally. DNA test. Can you get a sample from Clara hair from her brush? Yeah, I can do that. I'll find a private lab, somewhere discreet. And if the test confirms it, Lucas asked, then we figure out how to stop Evelyn and protect Clara. Lucas extended his hand. Partners? I took it. Partners. We stood there, two strangers 48 hours ago, now bound by a little girl with dark hair and a woman who'd betrayed us both. Then Lucas cleared his throat. There's something else you should know. I waited. That night at the restaurant when I invited you to join us. He paused. That wasn't a coincidence? My stomach tightened. What do you mean? I've been looking for Elena for 7 years. About 3 months ago, I was doing another search. Found a business article about Hawthorne Holdings. There was a photo of the leadership team. And you saw Evelyn. I saw Elena. The article said Evelyn Hawthorne 5P of operations. So I started digging. Found more photos the company website. He gestured at me. Found you. And Elena had a photo in her Portland apartment. An old picture from a company picnic, you and a teenage girl. I didn't think much of it then. But when I saw you on the Hawthorne Holdings website, I recognized you. I stared at him. You've been watching me for 3 months, trying to figure out how to approach you without sounding crazy. What was I supposed to say? Your daughter might be my missing ex-girlfriend. He laughed without humor. Then I saw the scene at the restaurant, saw them turn you away, and I thought maybe you needed to know the truth as much as I did. You orchestrated this. I took an opportunity. I didn't plan for your daughter to humiliate you. But when it happened, I saw a chance to help you and get the answers I've been searching for. I should have been angry. He'd manipulated me, used my pain as an opening, but all I felt was relief. Lucas had been looking for the truth as desperately as I was. You spent 7 years searching, I said, for Clara, so she'd know her mother didn't disappear for no reason. I looked at this man who'd become an ally in 48 hours and realized Evelyn had miscalculated badly, because now there were 2 of us. We should get started on that DNA test, I said. Lucas nodded. I'll get Clara's sample tonight. I'll make the calls tomorrow. He headed for the door, then stopped. Edmund, whatever happens next, Clara comes first. No matter what we find out, Clara's safety comes first. Agreed. After he left, I stood in my study looking at the evidence. The fake evaluation, the drug medication, the stolen money. My daughter had orchestrated all of this to protect a secret she'd buried 7 years ago. But she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated what a father and a man who'd spent 7 years loving the daughter she'd abandoned would do to protect a little girl with dark hair and a dimpled smile. The email arrived at 7:30 Tuesday morning, while I was sitting at my kitchen table with coffee I couldn't taste and toast I couldn't eat. Subject results: patient I, DEH-20024-0928. From Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Pacific Northwest Genetics Laboratory. My hand shook as I clicked to open it. The PDF downloaded slowly, or maybe it just felt slow because every second was an eternity. Finally, the document filled my screen. Paternity test results. Confidential. Alleged grandfather Edmund James Hawthorne. Child Clara Rose. Brooks. Date of collection: September 29th, 2024. Date of analysis: October 1st, 2024. I scrolled down, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Past the technical details about genetic markers and probability calculations, past the laboratory certification, to the conclusion at the bottom of the page. Conclusion: based on the genetic analysis of the submitted samples, the probability that Edmund James Hawthorne is the biological grandfather of Clara Rose Brooks is 99.97%. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. 99.97%. Not a possibility, not a likelihood, a certainty. Clara was my granddaughter. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I tried to blink them away, but they kept coming. I hadn't cried this much since Marianne's funeral, and now I couldn't seem to stop. My granddaughter, Marianne's granddaughter. The thought of Marianne hit me like a physical blow. I pushed away from the computer and walked to the living room, to the mantel where her photograph still sat in its silver frame. She was smiling at the camera, her hair caught by wind, standing in the garden she'd loved so much. "We have a granddaughter," I whispered to the photograph. "Her name is Clara." I remembered the conversations we'd had late at night when Evelyn was young. Marianne would talk about the future, about grandchildren we'd spoil, holidays we'd host, the family we'd build together across generations. "I wish Evelyn would give us a grandchild someday," she'd said once, not long before she died. We'd been sitting on the porch watching the sunset. "I want to see what kind of mother she'll be. I want to teach her grandbaby all the things I taught her." I'd promised, holding her hand. But that was 3 years ago. And now Marianne was gone, and the granddaughter she'd wished for had been alive this whole time, 7 years old, with dark hair and hazel eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. And I'd never known she existed. I pulled out my phone and called Lucas. He answered on the first ring. "Did you get the results?" His voice was tight. "In 99.97%, I said. "Clara is my granddaughter." Silence. Then I heard him exhale a long, shaky breath that might have been a sob. "Jesus," he whispered. "I mean, we knew, but knowing for certain is different." "Yeah." Another pause. "What do we do now?" It was the same question I'd been asking myself for the past 10 minutes. We need to figure out why Evelyn abandoned Clara, and what she's planning now that might connect to it. "Do you think she knows we're investigating?" "I don't know, but we need to be careful. If she realizes we've made the connection..." I didn't finish the sentence. We both knew what Evelyn was capable of. "Should we tell Clara?" Lucas asked quietly. "That you're her grandfather?" The question made my chest ache. I wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell that beautiful little girl that she had family, that she wasn't just the daughter of a mother who'd abandoned her. She was my granddaughter, Marianne's legacy. Part of a family that would love her unconditionally. But I couldn't. Not yet. "She's 7 years old," I said. "And she's already been through so much. If we tell her now before we know what Evelyn's planning, before we can protect her..." I stopped, swallowed hard. "Let's keep her safe first. Then we'll figure out how to tell her the truth." "You're right." Lucas's voice was rough. "God, I hate that you're right, but you are. Did you send me the scan of Clara's birth certificate?" "Check your email. I sent it this morning." I pulled up my inbox on the computer. There it was, another PDF, this one a copy of an Oregon State birth certificate. I opened it. Certificate of live birth, State of Oregon. Child's name, Clara Rose. Brooks, date of birth. February 14th, 2017, place of birth, Providence, Portland Medical Center, Portland, Oregon. Mother's name, Elena Margaret Brooks. Mother's age, 22, stated. Father's name, Lucas Thomas Brooks. Father's age, 28. I stared at the mother's name. Elena Margaret Brooks. Margaret. Evelyn's full name was Evelyn Margaret Hawthorne. The middle name had come from Mary Ann's mother, a family tradition she'd been so proud of. And Evelyn had given that name to the alias she'd used to seduce Lucas. As if even while lying about everything else, she couldn't quite erase who she really was. The middle name? I said to Lucas. Did you notice? Margaret, yeah, I saw that. That's Evelyn's middle name, Evelyn Margaret Hawthorne. So she kept part of her real identity, Lucas said slowly, even while lying about everything else. Maybe she couldn't help it. Or maybe... I studied the birth certificate again. Maybe she wanted to leave a trail, some part of her that could be found if anyone looked hard enough. But you didn't look, until now. No, the word tasted bitter. I didn't. I printed out the birth certificate and the DNA results, then filed them carefully in a folder I labeled simply Clara. Evidence, but also something more, proof of a connection I should have known about 7 years ago, Valentine's Day. Clara had been born on Valentine's Day 2 weeks before Evelyn abandoned her. 2 weeks before she came back to Greenwood Hills and slipped back into her old life as if nothing had happened. What had those 2 weeks been like? Had Evelyn held her baby, fed her, looked at Clara's face and felt anything at all? Or had she already been planning her escape? I looked at Mary Ann's photograph again. I'll protect her, I promised. I'll make sure Clara knows she's loved, that she belongs to a family. Even if that family was broken, even if the person who should have loved Clara most had thrown her away. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Thank you for wanting to be her grandfather, for not giving up. I typed back, she's family. That's all that matters. And it was true. Whatever Evelyn had done, whatever she was planning, Clara was innocent. She was 7 years old and loved dinosaurs, and drew pictures for strangers and called people grandpa with heartbreaking ease. She was my granddaughter, and I would protect her. I just didn't know yet what I'd have to protect her from. Lucas called me Wednesday night with an update. I'm going to Portland tomorrow, he said. I need to dig into Elena's past, see what I can find. Do you want me to come with you? No, he replied. Stay there. Keep an eye on things. If Evelyn suspects we're investigating, she might make a move. He hesitated. And this is something I need to do. For Clara. I understood, so I waited. Thursday evening he called again. His voice was different this time, tight controlled, like he was holding something back. I found things he said. You need to hear this. He started at Portland Community College. The registrar's office was tucked behind the main administration hall, staffed by a middle-aged woman who barely looked up as she typed. I need information about a former student, Lucas said. Elena Brooks, fall 2016. The registrar frowned at her screen. I'm not seeing any record of an Elena Brooks enrolled that term. Are you certain of the name? Could you try Evelyn Hawthorne? Her fingers paused, then resumed. Yes, Evelyn Hawthorne. She audited 2 courses in fall 2016, Psychology 101 and Creative Writing. Not degree seeking. Something clicked for Lucas. Elena hadn't truly existed. She'd created a version of herself that couldn't be easily traced. Can I contact the instructors? The registrar hesitated, then nodded. Psychology was taught by Professor Linda Anderson. She's still here. Professor Anderson's office was cluttered with books and papers. She studied Lucas carefully when he mentioned Evelyn. I remember her, she said. Quiet, sat in the back, rarely spoke, but her written work was excellent. She paused. She dropped the class after midterms. That surprised me. Did she explain why? She said she was pregnant, said she needed to focus on that. Professor Anderson tilted her head. You're the father. Lucas nodded. She told me she was 22, the professor said softly. I thought she was handling things well for someone so young. She was 30, Lucas said. Professor Anderson exhaled. Then I'm sorry. For you. And for the child. From the college, Lucas drove to the southeast Portland apartment where Elena had lived. The landlord, Mrs. Rodriguez, remembered her immediately. That girl, she said, shaking her head. She vanished in the middle of the night, left most of her things behind, owed me 2 months' rent. What happened to her belongings? I donated most of it, but I kept a few things in storage. She studied Lucas. You're the baby's father. Yes. She hurt you. Yes. Mrs. Rodriguez led him to a wire storage cage in the basement and pulled out a small box labeled 3B, Brooks. Not much, she said, but there's this. She handed him a blue spiral notebook. A journal. If I read it in my car, Lucas told me. I couldn't wait. It began in September 2016 when Evelyn arrived in Portland. She wrote about running away from me, from the company, from expectations she couldn't meet. She wrote about suffocation grief and feeling invisible after my wife died. Then she wrote about meeting Lucas, about lying easily, pretending to be younger, free. She writes about getting pregnant in December, Lucas said, and everything changes. Changes how I asked. Fear? Panic? She wants to run again, but doesn't know where. He swallowed. I'm going to read you something. The entry was dated February 10th, 4 days before Clara was born. I can't do this. I'm not ready to be a mother. I thought a baby might give me purpose, make me real. But all I feel is terror. Dad would disown me if he knew. Not just about the baby, but the lies. The fake name, the running. I can't bear the disappointment. Better to never tell him. Better to let him believe I'm still his perfect daughter, even if it means abandoning this child. Even if it breaks Lucas's heart. I'm a coward. I know that. I just don't know how to be anything else. I couldn't speak. There's more, Lucas said. The final entry was dated February 27th. I have to go home. I have to fix this. And I have to make sure no one ever finds out about the baby. If Dad learns about Clara, he'll try to fix it. He'll get involved. Everyone will know what I did. That I ran away. That I abandoned my own child. I can't let that happen. So I'm burying this. Portland Elena Brooks, the baby, none of it ever existed. And if Dad starts asking questions, I'll make sure he can't. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, I repeated. She decided then, Lucas said. Not the abandonment, but the silencing. I thought of the forged evaluations, the drugged meals, the missing money. She wrote the blueprint 7 years ago, I said, and she's been following it ever since. Yes, I looked at the DNA results on my desk, the birth certificate, the truth she'd tried to erase. Thank you, I said. I did it for Clara, Lucas replied, but we have to be careful. He didn't need to finish. My daughter had written her intentions down, and she was carrying them out, even if it meant destroying me. That night after Lucas told me about the journal, I asked him to tell me everything. Not the abbreviated version, not the highlights, everything. How they met, how it happened, how she left. I need to understand, I said, not just what she did, but how. I need to see it through your eyes. So he told me, and I listened. September 2016. Lucas had been sitting in a coffee shop near Portland Community College working on code for a freelance project when a woman sat down at the table next to him. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, oversized sweater backpack that looked like it had seen better days. She'd smiled at him, shy, uncertain, and asked if he had a phone charger she could borrow. I'm Elena, she'd said when he handed it over. Thanks for this. I'm always forgetting mine. Lucas, and no problem. They'd started talking. She told him she was 22, a student at PCC, trying to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. He told her about his work as a software developer, about moving to Portland 2 years ago for a fresh start. She'd laughed at his jokes, asked questions about his work, seemed genuinely interested in everything he said. She made me feel seen, Lucas told me, like I mattered. I'd been lonely for a long time, and suddenly here was this girl who wanted to know about my day, my thoughts, my dreams. They'd exchanged numbers, started meeting for coffee, then dinner, then more. October 2016. By October, Elena was spending most nights at Lucas's apartment. She'd show up with takeout stay to watch movies, fall asleep on his couch. It felt natural when she started leaving clothes there, when she stopped going back to her own place. I asked her to move in officially, Lucas said. It seemed crazy we'd only been dating a month, but it felt right. She'd said yes. A week later, he'd proposed. Nothing fancy, just him and her in his apartment, a ring he'd bought from a vintage shop downtown. I know it's fast, he'd said, but I love you. I want to build a life with you. She'd looked at the ring for a long moment. Then, I'm not ready. I'm sorry, Lucas. It's not you, it's just, I'm not ready. He'd been disappointed but understanding. They were young. There was time. 2 weeks after that, she'd told him she was pregnant. November 2016. The pregnancy terrified her. Lucas could see it in her eyes every time she looked at the positive test, every time someone mentioned babies or asked when she was due. I can't tell my family, she'd said one night, curled up on the couch with her arms wrapped around her knees. Why not? They wouldn't understand. My father? She'd trailed off, shaking her head. He's very strict, very traditional. If he knew I was pregnant and unmarried, if he knew about you, what about me? You're not what he'd want for me. She'd said it apologetically, but the words had stung anyway. Lucas had promised he'd take care of her and the baby, that she didn't need her family's approval, that they'd be okay on their own. She'd nodded, but he could tell she didn't believe him. February 14th, 2017. Clara was born at Providence Portland Medical Center on Valentine's Day. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Dark hair, surprisingly alert eyes, a cry that filled the delivery room. The nurses had placed her on Elena's chest for skin-to-skin contact. Elena had looked down at the baby, her baby, with an expression Lucas couldn't read. Not love, not joy, not even curiosity, just nothing. I thought it was shock, Lucas told me, or exhaustion. Labor had been long. I told myself she'd bond with Clara once they got home, once she'd had time to rest and process. But the emptiness in Elena's eyes never went away. For 2 weeks she went through the motions. Changed diapers, fed Clara, bottles held her when she cried. But there was no connection, no warmth. She moved like a robot doing what needed to be done, without any emotion behind it. Lucas had called the hospital worried about postpartum depression. They'd scheduled an appointment for the following week. Elena never made it to that appointment. February 28th, 2017. Lucas woke at 3 in the morning to Clara's crying. He'd reached across the bed, automatically expecting to find Elena to take turns soothing their daughter the way they'd been doing for 2 weeks. The bed was empty. He'd gotten up, gone to Clara's crib, picked up his screaming daughter. "Shh, baby, it's okay. Daddy's here." But where was Elena? He'd searched the apartment. Bathroom empty. Kitchen empty. Living room empty. Her backpack was gone. Her jacket. Her ID. On the kitchen counter, weighted down by a coffee mug, was a piece of notebook paper torn from a spiral binding. "I'm sorry, I can't do this. Take care of her. E." That was all. No explanation, no phone number, no forwarding address. Just a baby screaming in his arms, and a note that changed his life forever. I called her phone. Lucas said, his voice hollow with the memory. Over and over, it went straight to voicemail. I called hospitals, police shelters, filed a missing person report. But she'd left voluntarily, and she was an adult, so there wasn't much they could do. He'd sat on the floor of his apartment holding Clara and cried until he had nothing left. I sat across from Lucas in my living room, the story hanging between us like smoke. Outside it was dark, we'd been talking for hours. The coffee in my mug had gone cold. "You spent 7 years looking for her," I said. "For Clara," he corrected. So she'd have answers. So when she got old enough to ask why her mother left, I could tell her something beyond, "I don't know." He looked at me. I wanted to understand. And I wanted Clara to know it wasn't her fault, that there was a reason even if it was a terrible one. And now you have your answer. Yes. His smile was bitter. Elena Brooks was Evelyn Hawthorne. The woman I loved was a lie. She wasn't 22. She wasn't a student. She wasn't figuring out her life. She was running from it. And when reality caught up to her when she had a baby, she didn't want and couldn't explain. He gestured helplessly. She ran again. I thought about Evelyn at 7 years old, sitting on my shoulders at the 4th of July parade. About the journal entry where she wrote that she wasn't ready to be a mother, that I would disown her if I knew. She'd been so wrong. I would never have disowned her. I would have helped, supported, loved her through it. But she'd never given me the chance. And the answer we have, I said slowly, isn't the one either of us wanted. No? Lucas stood, picked up his jacket. But it's the truth. And now we have to figure out what to do with it. After he left, I sat in the dark and thought about my daughter, about the choices she'd made, the lies she'd told the people she'd hurt. And I wondered if she'd been capable of abandoning her own newborn baby 7 years ago. What else was she capable of now? Before I walk you through that confrontation, before I tell you what I said to Evelyn and how she reacted, I need to know you're still here. Drop a comment below and tell me. What would you do if you discovered your own child had been lying to you for 7 years? Would you confront them? Or would you walk away? I genuinely want to hear your perspective, because what happens next will leave you speechless. And just a heads up, this story includes some fictional elements for storytelling purposes. So, if that's not your thing, feel free to stop here. But if you're ready for the confrontation you've been waiting for, let's go. 3 days after the DNA confirmation, I drove downtown to Hawthorne Holdings. The building rose from glass and steel, 20 stories of success I had built from nothing over 4 decades. I remembered the pride I felt when we first moved into this space, convinced I was creating something that would last for generations. Now I wasn't sure of anything. The receptionist looked up as I entered the lobby, her professional smile faltering. "Mr. Hawthorne, we weren't expecting you today. I'm here to see my daughter. Of course, I know where her office is." I walked past the desk before she could call ahead. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt endless. In the reflection of the polished doors, I barely recognized myself, older, harder, angrier than I'd been only a week ago. Evelyn's office sat at the end of the hall overlooking the city she loved. I didn't knock. I opened the door and stepped inside. She was seated at her computer reviewing reports. When she saw me, surprise flickered across her face, real unguarded. "Dad," she stood. "What are you doing here?" I closed the door and locked it. The sound echoed. "I met someone interesting this week," I said calmly. "A man named Lucas Brooks." I watched her face change. Color drained from her skin. "And his daughter?" I continued. "Clara, 7 years old, dark hair, hazel eyes, a dimple in her left cheek." I stopped in front of her desk. "Your eyes, your dimple, your daughter." Evelyn lowered herself into her chair, gripping the desk. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me anymore," I said. "I have DNA results, 99.97% probability. Clara Brooks is my granddaughter, your child." Silence filled the room. Outside the window, the city kept moving. "How did you find out?" she whispered. "Does it matter?" "Yes, you left traces," I said. "Even when you ran, you couldn't fully disappear. Elena Margaret Brooks. You kept your middle name." Her jaw tightened. "Why did you come here? Why did you abandon your daughter?" "I was young. I made a mistake." "You were 30, I said sharply. "You made a choice." Her voice rose. "What was I supposed to do? Come home and admit I'd been living under a fake name? That I'd had a baby with someone I barely knew?" "You could have told me," I said quietly. "I would have helped." She laughed bitterly. You were too busy grieving Mom to notice me." "That's not fair." "Fair." She slammed her hands on the desk. "Mom died and you disappeared. I lost both parents in one day. I was grieving. So was I." Her voice cracked. "I needed you. You weren't there. I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. I'm sorry," I said. "I should have been better. But this isn't about then. This is about what you did to Clara and what you're doing to me now." Her expression closed. "I don't know what you mean. Why did you cancel my reservation at the Lexington room? Why did you tell them I was confused?" "Because you are," she said calmly. "You're 70. You forget things." "I'm not forgetting anything I said. You've been building a case, questioning neighbors, stealing statements, drugging my food. You're paranoid." I found the evaluation. I dropped the paper on her desk. "Dr. Brady Thornton doesn't exist. You forged this to declare me incompetent and silence me." She stared at the document, then looked up. Her eyes were cold. "You need to leave. We're not finished." "Yes, we are." She lifted her phone. "Leave now or I call security." I looked at my daughter and felt something break. "She's 7, I said softly. "Clara is 7. She draws pictures for strangers and calls them Grandpa because she's desperate for family. She doesn't know her mother abandoned her." "Get out," Evelyn said. I turned toward the door. My hand paused on the handle. "I thought I knew you," I said. "I thought the girl who believed I could fix anything was still there." I shook my head. "But she's gone." She didn't respond. I left. As I walked down the hall, I heard her door close. Through the glass, I saw her pick up her phone, not to call security, but someone else. The look on her face as she spoke made my blood run cold. Whatever was coming next, I had just made it worse. I drove home from the office in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. My thoughts replaying the confrontation again and again. The look in Evelyn's eyes when she told me to leave. The cold certainty that she wasn't finished, that she wouldn't back down. The moment I got home, I called Lucas. "How did it go?" he asked. "She didn't deny it," I said. My voice sounded empty. Not really. She deflected, got angry, tried to turn it around, but she didn't deny abandoning Clara. She didn't deny any of it. Lucas was quiet for a beat. "What did she say when you confronted her about the evaluation?" "She told me to leave, and when I walked out I saw her pick up her phone. She was calling someone, and the look on her face, I sank into the chair in my study. She's going to retaliate. Then we need to move fast," Lucas said. "We need to understand exactly what she's doing. I want to know who Dr. Brady Thornton really is, how she found him, what role he's playing." "I'll make some calls," Lucas said. "Give me a couple of hours." I tried to wait. I made coffee I didn't drink. I paced. I stared at the fake psychiatric evaluation, still sitting on my desk, exactly where I'd left it before everything exploded. 2 hours felt endless. When Lucas finally called, I answered immediately. "Tell me." "Brady Thornton isn't a licensed psychiatrist," Lucas said. "He's not licensed at all." I straightened. "Go on." "He was a medical student at Oregon Health and Science University. 2 years. Dropped out in 2018. No degree, no license, no certification. Papers rustled. After that, he rebranded himself as a wellness coach, more specifically, an elder care consultant. And that means officially helping families navigate aging concerns, unofficially helping adult children build cases for conservatorship. He produces assessments designed to make elderly parents appear incompetent. My stomach tightened. The evaluation. Yes, and he's done this before. How many times? 4 documented cases in the last 3 years. In all 4, his evaluations were used to pursue conservatorship. All 4 cases settled quietly. The parents gave up control rather than fight. 4 families, 4 lives dismantled. So, he's a scam artist, I said. An elder abuser, Lucas corrected. He found a profitable niche. How did Evelyn find him? They met at a healthcare conference in Seattle in 2022. There's a photo, networking event. He gave a presentation on cognitive decline in aging executives. 2 years ago. She'd been planning this long before I suspected anything. Send me the photo. Already did. I opened my laptop. The image showed a group of professionals holding drinks. In the back, Evelyn stood beside a man with sandy hair and an easy smile. Brady Thornton. They stood close, familiar. She sought him out, I said. This wasn't random. No, Lucas agreed. She likely knew exactly what he did. What about the other families? Most details are sealed, but all 4 adult children claimed dementia. All relied on Brady's evaluations. All parents surrendered. Because fighting would mean questioning their own sanity, I said quietly. It's psychological warfare. Yes, I opened my trust account. The balance should have been $200,000. It was $150,000. I scrolled. 3 weeks ago, $50,000 transferred out. She's already stealing, I said. What? The trust fund? $50,000 gone? And another 10 last month. 15 before that. Edmund, we need the police, Lucas said. This is fraud. They not yet. Why not? It's not enough, I said. Right now it looks like a family dispute. A concerned daughter, a wellness consultant, a worried aging father. But she'll say I'm paranoid, that I'm proving her point. She has witnesses. She's been preparing this for months. So, what do you want to do? I looked around my study, at the documents, at Marianne's photograph. I want to know the full plan, I said. Brady doesn't work for free. There's an endgame. I want to know it before we move. Lucas was silent. You're sure? No, but I know going early will help her. And if she escalates, she will, I said. After we hung up, I sat alone and thought about my daughter, about the girl who believed I could fix anything, about the woman who hired a con artist to destroy me. I thought about Brady Thornton and the families he'd helped dismantle, and I wondered how far Evelyn would go. 4 families had surrendered. 4 parents had lost everything rather than fight. But I wasn't going to surrender, even if it meant accepting that the daughter I raised was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Someone who abandoned her child and was now dismantling her father's life to keep that secret buried. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark and wondered where her line was. And I realized I didn't know. I no longer knew what my daughter was capable of. But I was about to find out. The Saturday morning light felt different, colder somehow, even though the sun was shining. I sat in my study with my phone in my hand, Lucas across from me, and the weight of what we had discovered pressing down on both of us. I dialed Martin Hughes at 8:30. He answered on the second ring. Edmund, he said, his voice cautious. It's early. What's wrong? I told him everything. The evidence, the forgeries, the money, the plan. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Edmund, Martin said, finally his tone grave. This is very serious. You need to contact law enforcement immediately. What charges are we talking about? I asked. Elder abuse fraud, criminal conspiracy identity theft, possibly more. This isn't something you can handle on your own. You need the FBI and local police involved. Today. I thanked him and hung up. Lucas met my eyes. Greenwood Hills Police Station, he asked. I nodded. Let's go. The Greenwood Hills Police Station was a low brick building on the edge of town, surrounded by oak trees and a parking lot that smelled faintly of asphalt and coffee. Lucas and I walked in together, and the officer at the front desk directed us to Detective William Cooper's office. Cooper was in his mid-50s with gray at his temples and the kind of calm, weathered face that came from decades of hearing terrible things. He gestured for us to sit. Gentlemen, he said, what can I do for you? I laid it all out, the fake psychiatric evaluation, the lorazepam prescribed by a non-existent doctor, the missing bank statements, the jewelry, the deleted security footage. I showed him the documents, the medication bottle, the timeline Lucas and I had pieced together. Cooper listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "Mr. Hawthorne?" he said, "this falls under elder abuse statutes. It's also financial exploitation, and given the scope of what you're describing, I'm going to need to bring in the FBI." "The FBI?" Lucas asked. Cooper nodded. "They have a dedicated unit for elder justice cases. This isn't just theft, it's systematic. Give me a moment." He picked up his phone and made a call. 20 minutes later, a man in a dark suit walked into the office. "A Special Agent Spencer Torres," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm, his eyes sharp. "FBI Elder Justice Initiative. Detective Cooper briefed me, Mr. Hawthorne, we take these cases very seriously." I handed him the evidence, the bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers, the fake evaluation, the bottle of Lorazepam, and the background report Lucas had compiled. Torres studied each document carefully. When he looked up, his expression was grim. "We need to build a case," he said. "That means gathering more evidence, preferably in real time. Mr. Hawthorne, would you be willing to help us collect recorded evidence?" "Oh, Cesta." I stared at him. "You want me to record my own daughter?" "If you're willing," Torres said evenly. "We need her to admit what she's doing. A confession on tape would be invaluable." The words hit me like a punch. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. Lucas leaned forward. "What about Clara?" he asked. "She's 7 years old. She can't be dragged into this." Torres met his gaze. "We'll protect the child. Our priority is stopping the people doing harm. If Clara is safe with you, we'll make sure she stays that way." "And Brady Thornton?" I asked. Cooper spoke up. "We're already looking into him. If what you've told us is accurate, he's done this before. We'll investigate him separately." Torres pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "Here's what I'm proposing. You meet with your daughter again, somewhere neutral, somewhere we can monitor. You wear a wire. You get her talking. If she admits to any part of this, the forgeries, the medications, the money we move in..." I looked down at the folder. Inside were consent forms, legal disclaimers, instructions for wearing a recording device. "You'd be helping us not just with your case," Torres added, "but potentially with others. People like Brady Thornton prey on vulnerable individuals. If we can tie him to this, we can shut him down." Lucas looked at me. "Edmund, you don't have to do this." But I did. I knew I did. When I asked, "As soon as you're ready," Torres said. "We'll set it up, brief you on what to say, and monitor everything in real time. You won't be alone." I nodded slowly. "Then let's do it." Cooper stood and shook my hand. "You're doing the right thing, Mr. Hawthorne." Torres handed me a business card. "Call me when you're ready to set up the meeting. We'll take it from there." Lucas and I walked out of the police station into the bright morning sunlight. My hands were shaking. "You okay?" Lucas asked. I wasn't sure how to answer. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread relief that I was no longer facing this alone, that people with authority and resources were finally involved. But also dread because I knew what came next would tear my family apart. "I don't know," I said finally. "But we're doing this. For Clara, for Marianne, for everyone Evelyn and Brady have hurt." Lucas nodded. "Then we'll see it through." We climbed into his car, and as we drove back toward Greenwood Hills, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. The authorities were involved now. There was no going back. And somewhere out there, Evelyn had no idea what was coming. The FBI moved quickly. By the following Monday afternoon, there were 2 technicians in my study, installing surveillance equipment, a camera hidden in the bookshelf, microphones in the smoke detectors, and a small recording device I'd wear clipped to my belt whenever Evelyn came by. "It's voice-activated," Verspecklisterne Torres explained, showing me the device. "You won't have to do anything except talk. We'll be monitoring remotely." Lucas stood near the window, arms crossed. "And if something goes wrong, we'll have a team nearby at all times," Torres assured him. "Mr. Hawthorne won't be in danger." I wasn't so sure about that, but I nodded anyway. Day 1, Monday evening. Evelyn arrived at 6:30 unannounced as usual. I heard her car in the driveway and felt the small recorder press against my ribs beneath my sweater. She let herself in with her key. "Hi, Dad," she said, breezing into the living room. Her tone was light, but her eyes were calculating. "I wanted to check in on you." "I'm fine," I said carefully. She sat down across from me, folding her hands in her lap. "Actually, I've been thinking. You're getting older. Living alone in this big house, it's not safe. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself." Are you... She tilted her head as if genuinely concerned. Dad, I think it might be time to consider an assisted living facility, somewhere with staff, people who can keep an eye on you. The words felt rehearsed. I forced myself to stay calm. Why would I need that? Because you're 70 years old, she said, leaning forward, and Dr. Thornton seems to think it would be in your best interest. There it was, Brady's name spoken aloud. I see, I said quietly. Evelyn smiled. Just think about it, okay? She left 10 minutes later. As soon as the door closed, Torres called. We got it, he said. She mentioned Thornton. That ties her to him directly. Day 3, Wednesday afternoon. FBI surveillance tracked Evelyn to a small cafe on the north side of town. Brady Thornton met her there at 2 o'clock. I wasn't present, but Torres called me afterward with the details. We couldn't get audio, he explained, but we had a lip reader analyze the footage. Your daughter told Thornton the old man won't cooperate. Thornton replied, we need to push harder. Get him committed to a psych facility. I felt sick. They're escalating, Torres continued. That's good for us. Means they're desperate. Day 5, Friday morning. Torres had instructed me to fake a medical episode, something believable but not dangerous. Something that would prompt Evelyn to act. So on Friday morning I called her. Evelyn, I said, letting my voice waver slightly. I'm not feeling well. She arrived within 20 minutes. I was sitting in the living room when she walked in, clutching my chest theatrically. Dad, she said sharply. What's wrong? I don't know, I said, dizzy, my chest. She didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and called 911. The paramedics arrived 12 minutes later. They checked my vitals and loaded me onto a stretcher. Evelyn rode with me to the hospital, her face tight with what might have been concern or frustration. At the ER, the attending physician ran tests. Mr. Hawthorne, he said finally, you're perfectly fine. All your vitals are normal. Evelyn's expression hardened, but he collapsed. There's no medical indication of that, the doctor said gently. Evelyn stared at me. For just a moment, I saw something cold flicker across her face. On the drive home, she didn't say a word. Day 7, Sunday evening. Torres called me that night. We have enough surveillance footage, he said. The cafe meeting, the hospital incident, the recordings from your house. It all paints a clear picture. But we need one more thing. What? A direct threat, or a demand. Something explicit that we can use in court. Right now, everything's circumstantial. We need her to make a move. Oh, how do I get her to do that? Invite her over, Torres said. Tell her you're ready to discuss arrangements for your future. Make it sound like you're giving in. She'll think she's won. That's when people get careless. I took a breath, and then we move in. I sent Evelyn a text message that night. Can we talk? I'm ready to discuss my future. She replied within seconds. Friday morning, 10 a.m. We'll settle this once and for all. I stared at the screen. Friday. 5 days away. 5 days for her to plan whatever she was planning. Lucas came by late that evening. We sat in the study, neither of us saying much. You ready for this? He asked finally. I have to be, I said. Lucas nodded. Then we'll be ready too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Evelyn as a child, the way she used to hold my hand, the way she'd laugh at my terrible jokes. I thought about Marianne and how proud she'd been of our daughter. And I thought about Clara, 7 years old, who had no idea her mother had abandoned her, who had no idea that in 5 days everything would change. I knew what was coming, the wire, the confrontation, the confession, the moment when federal agents would walk through my door and arrest my own daughter. Friday would destroy my family. But it was the only way to save it. I told myself that over and over as I lay in the dark waiting for morning. Because if I didn't believe it, I wasn't sure I could go through with what came next. Thursday afternoon felt wrong from the moment Lucas called me. Edmund, he said, his voice tight with panic. Evelyn took Clara. I was in my study reviewing paperwork for tomorrow's confrontation. His words didn't register at first. What do you mean took her? From school, Lucas said. I went to pick her up at 3, and the teacher said her mother already came. Evelyn showed up with ID and Clara's birth certificate. Told them there was a family emergency. My blood went cold. Where is she now? I don't know, Lucas said. I'm calling Torres. Let's do it, I said, now. Special Agent Torres called me back 20 minutes later. We're aware of the situation, he said. Legally, Evelyn is Clara's biological mother. She has parental rights. Unless there's an immediate threat to the child's safety, we can't intervene. She abandoned Clara 7 years ago, I said, my voice rising. She has no right. Mr. Hawthorne, I understand your frustration, but this is a custody matter, not a criminal one. If Lucas wants to challenge this, he needs to go through family court. That could take weeks. I know, Torres said quietly, but our hands are tied unless there's evidence of harm or danger. Right now, Evelyn hasn't committed a crime by picking up her own daughter. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Where would she take her? I asked. Most likely her apartment, Torres said. We're sending officers to do a welfare check right now. Lucas called me 30 minutes later. They found them, he said. Clara's at Evelyn's apartment. She's okay physically, at least. The police said there's no immediate danger. Did you talk to her? For 2 minutes, Lucas said, his voice breaking. The officer let me speak to her. She asked me why the nice lady said she was her mom. I didn't know what to tell her. I closed my eyes. Clara was 7 years old. She had no idea what was happening. What did Evelyn say? I asked. Nothing. She wouldn't come to the phone. Just told the officer that Clara was her daughter, and she had every right to spend time with her. And the police? They said unless there's a court order, they can't remove Clara. Evelyn's within her legal rights. I called Martin Hughes immediately. Martin, I need an emergency custody petition filed tonight. Edmond Family Court doesn't work that way. Even an emergency hearing could take 72 hours. I don't care, I said. File it. Lucas has been Clara's sole caregiver for 7 years. Evelyn abandoned her. That has to count for something. It does, Martin said. But we'll need documentation proof of abandonment proof that Lucas has been the primary caregiver character witnesses. I can start the paperwork tonight, but we won't get a hearing until next week at the earliest. Next week, I felt the walls closing in. Clara could be gone by then. I'll do everything I can, Martin said, but you need to prepare Lucas for the possibility that this could get messy. Lucas came to my house that evening. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. She won't answer my calls, he said. I've tried 20 times. Evelyn just lets it go to voicemail. Torres said Clara's safe, I reminded him. She's not in danger. You don't know that, Lucas said, his voice raw. Evelyn abandoned her once. What if she does it again? What if she just disappears? I didn't have an answer for that. We sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. I thought about Clara, her drawing her smile the way she'd called me Grandpa Edmund that first night at the Lexington room. And I thought about Evelyn, my daughter, the woman who had given birth to Clara and then walked away. The woman who was now using that same child as leverage. She's going to call, I said finally. Lucas looked at me. How do you know? Because that's what this is about. She doesn't want Clara. She wants control. And she knows taking Clara is the one thing that will force us to negotiate. As if on cue, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Evelyn. Lucas leaned forward. Answer it. I put the phone on speaker. Hello, Evelyn. Her voice was calm. Too calm. And hi, Dad, she said sweetly. I thought we should talk. Where's Clara? She's fine. She's watching a movie. We had pizza for dinner. She's a sweet kid. I can see why Lucas is so attached. My jaw tightened. What do you want? I want to settle this, Evelyn said. All of it. Tomorrow, you, me, and the future of this family. Is that a threat? It's an invitation, she said. 10 a.m., your house. We'll discuss Clara, we'll discuss your estate, and we'll come to an agreement. And if I refuse? There was a pause. Then Evelyn's voice turned cold. Then I disappear with Clara, and you'll never see either of us again. The line went dead. Lucas stared at me, his face pale. She's serious, he said. I know. What do we do? I looked at the phone in my hand. Tomorrow was supposed to be the confrontation, the wire, the confession, the moment when everything came crashing down on Evelyn. But now she'd changed the game. Now Clara was in the middle of it. We go through with it, I said quietly. Torres will be monitoring. If Evelyn makes a single threat, if she admits to anything on tape, they move in, and then we get Clara back. And if it goes wrong, I didn't answer, because I didn't know. All I knew was that tomorrow, one way or another, this ended. That night I lay awake in the dark, thinking about the last time I'd felt this helpless. It was 3 years ago, sitting beside Marianne's hospital bed, watching her slip away. I'd failed her. I hadn't been able to save her, but I wouldn't fail Clara. Tomorrow I'd face my daughter. I'd wear the wire. I'd say whatever I had to say to get her to confess. And when it was over, Clara would be safe. I had to believe that, because if I didn't, I wasn't sure I could go through with it. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. I stood in my study at 9:30, watching Special Agent Torres attach the wire to my chest. The device was smaller than I'd expected, about the size of a quarter, with a thin microphone that ran up under my collar. "You're going to be fine," Torres said, adjusting the placement. "We'll hear everything. If at any point you feel unsafe, just say the word Mary Ann. That's the panic signal. We'll be inside in 30 seconds. I nodded, though my mouth was too dry to speak. Lucas stood by the window. He hadn't said much all morning. Detective Cooper was already outside in the surveillance van, parked 2 blocks away, with a clear line of sight to the house. "Remember," Torres said, "let her talk. Don't push too hard. If she feels cornered, she'll shut down. We need her to admit what she's planning, ideally with specifics. The transfer of assets, the fake medical evaluation, the threats. Anything that ties her to Brady Thornton." "And Clara?" I asked. "We have officers monitoring Evelyn's apartment," Torres said. "If Clara's there, we'll know. But right now, our priority is getting this confession on tape." At 9:55, Torres and Lucas left through the back door. I heard the van door close in the distance. I was alone. Evelyn arrived at exactly 10 o'clock. I heard her car in the driveway, the sound of her heels on the front steps. She let herself in with her key just like she always did. "Dad," she called out. "In here." I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She walked into the living room, looking calm and composed. She was wearing a tailored blazer and carrying a leather folder. Everything about her screamed control. "Good morning," she said, sitting down across from me without waiting for an invitation. "Where's Clara?" I asked. "She's safe," Evelyn said smoothly. "With a friend. We can talk about her later." "I want to see her." "And you will," Evelyn said, "after we finish our conversation. Now sit down." I sat. Evelyn opened the folder and pulled out several documents. "I've been very patient with you, Dad, but you're making this harder than it needs to be." "Making what harder?" "Your transition," she said, "into assisted living. It's time." "I don't need assisted living." "Dr. Thornton disagrees," Evelyn said. "In fact, he's prepared to testify in court that you're a danger to yourself, that you're no longer competent to manage your own affairs." "Brady Thornton isn't a real doctor," I said carefully. Evelyn smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "The court won't know that," she said. "All they'll see is a licensed medical professional raising concerns about an elderly man living alone. A man who's been experiencing memory lapses, confusion, paranoia. A man who needs help." "What do you want, Evelyn?" She leaned forward, her expression hardening. "I want you to sign power of attorney," she said, "full and irrevocable. And I want you to transfer controlling interest in Hawthorne Holdings to me. And if I refuse, then I take Clara and disappear," Evelyn said coldly. "Again. And this time, you'll never find us. I've done it before, Dad. I can do it again." My chest tightened. The wire pressed against my ribs. "You're using your own daughter as leverage," I asked. "She's insurance," Evelyn said. "A guarantee that you'll cooperate." "What happened to you?" I asked quietly. "How did you become this person?" For just a moment, something flickered across her face, something raw and wounded. "Now you did this," she said. "You and Mom, always so perfect, always so focused on your precious company, your legacy. I was invisible. That's not true." "Isn't it?" Evelyn's voice rose. "After Mom died, you didn't look at me once. Not once. I was grieving too, Dad, but all you cared about was your own pain." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "But this isn't the way to fix it." "This isn't about fixing anything," Evelyn said, standing up. "This is about survival, mine and Clara's. You sign the papers by Monday or I'm gone, for good." She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "Oh, and Dad, if you try to stop me, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. Unfit, incompetent, dangerous. Think about that." She opened the door. "Evelyn," I said. She paused. "Clara deserves better than this," I said. "Better than you running. Better than being used as a pawn." Evelyn's face went cold. "Clara will have everything I never did," she said. "Money, freedom, a life that's actually hers." "And what about a mother who stays?" The question hung in the air between us. Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Sign the papers, Dad, Monday, noon, or lose everything." She walked out. The door closed behind her. For a long moment, I just sat there, my heart pounding. Then Torres's voice crackled in my earpiece. "We got her," he said. "Every word. Edmund, you did it." 4 hours after the recording, I sat in the FBI surveillance van with Lucas watching everything unfold on a bank of monitors. Special Agent Torres had insisted we stay back for safety reasons, he'd said. But I think he knew I needed to see this happen. I needed to know it was real. The van was cramped and smelled faintly of coffee and electronics. Lucas sat beside me, his knee bouncing nervously, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. On the dashboard, 3 monitors glowed in the dim interior, one showing Brady Thornton's office building, another trained on Evelyn's apartment complex, and the third displaying a live feed of the police radio communications. Torres stood behind us, his arms crossed his face, illuminated by the blue light of the screens. Detective Cooper was already on scene with the arrest teams coordinating the operation through an earpiece. Everything had been planned down to the minute. Everything had to go perfectly. On the center screen, 2 FBI agents approached the glass doors of Brady Thornton's office building downtown. Torres and Detective Cooper led the team flanked by 4 uniformed officers. The building was a sleek mid-rise in the financial district, all reflective windows and modern architecture. Brady's practice occupied the 3rd floor, a suite designed to project competence and legitimacy, even though the man inside was neither. Lucas leaned forward, his hands clenched. "They're really doing this." "Yes," I said quietly. "They are." I watched as the agents pushed through the glass doors and entered the lobby. The building's security camera feed showed them striding past a startled doorman and heading straight for the elevators. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. They knew exactly where they were going. My heart pounded as the elevator doors closed. For 30 seconds we had no visual, just the soft crackle of radio chatter as Torres coordinated with the team. Then the doors opened on the 3rd floor, and the agent stepped out into a carpeted hallway lined with office doors. Brady Thornton's suite was at the end of the hall. The brass nameplate beside the door read, "Dr. Brady Thornton Wellness and Cognitive Health Consulting." It looked professional, trustworthy, exactly the kind of place a concerned family member would bring an aging parent. The receptionist at Brady's office looked up as the agents entered. She was young, probably in her 20s, with blonde hair pulled into a neat ponytail and a bright smile that faltered the moment she saw the badges. "Can I help you?" she asked nervously, her hand hovering over the phone on her desk. Torres held up his credentials, the gold FBI badge glinting under the overhead lights. "FBI. We need to speak with Dr. Brady Thornton." The receptionist's eyes widened. She glanced toward the closed door behind her desk, Brady's private office. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Torres said, his voice calm but firm. "But he'll want to see us." The receptionist hesitated, clearly unsure of what to do. Her training probably hadn't covered what to do when federal agents showed up demanding to see her boss. She picked up the phone, her hands shaking slightly, and pressed a button. A moment later, Brady's voice came through the intercom, smooth and controlled. "What's this about?" Torres leaned over the desk, speaking directly into the intercom so his voice would carry clearly. "Elder abuse fraud and conspiracy." He said loudly enough for anyone in the waiting room to hear. "You can come out here, or we can come in there." There was a long pause. I could almost see Brady on the other side of that door, his mind racing, calculating his options. He was a con artist. He'd probably imagined this moment dozens of times, rehearsed what he'd say, how he'd react. But theory was different from reality. Then the door opened and Brady emerged from his office. He was exactly as I'd seen in the photographs Lucas had found, mid-40s, sandy hair, styled carefully, wearing an expensive suit that projected authority and success. His face was composed, almost serene, but his eyes were sharp with calculation. This was a man who made his living reading people exploiting their fears and vulnerabilities. "I'm not sure what you think you have," Brady said smoothly, addressing Torres as if they were colleagues discussing a misunderstanding over coffee. "But I'm a licensed mental health professional. Anything between me and my clients is confidential." Cooper stepped forward, pulling a folder from under his arm. He opened it deliberately, letting Brady see the documents inside: copies of medical school records, licensing board searches, interviews with former classmates. "You're not licensed, Mr. Thornton," Cooper said, his voice hard. "You dropped out of medical school in 2018. You never completed your degree. You never sat for any licensing exam, which means you have no credentials, no professional standing, and no doctor-patient privilege to hide behind." Brady's composure slipped for just a second. I saw it in his eyes, the flash of panic, the realization that his carefully constructed facade was crumbling. He recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. "I'd like to call my lawyer," he said, his voice tight. "You can do that from the station," Torres said. He nodded to the uniformed officers standing behind him. "Brady Thornton, you're under arrest for elder abuse fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, and practicing medicine without a license." The officers moved in smoothly, professionally. One of them pulled Brady's arms behind his back, while the other secured handcuffs around his wrists. Brady didn't resist, but his jaw tightened, his face flushing with anger and humiliation as the cold metal clicked into place. "You have the right to remain silent." Cooper began reading him his Miranda rights in a flat, practiced tone. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you." As they led Brady out of the office past his stunned receptionist and the handful of clients sitting in the waiting room, I saw him glance back once, a desperate, calculating look, as if he were already searching for a way to escape, to spin this, to salvage something from the wreckage. But there was nothing left to salvage. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the forged documents, the testimony from the families he had victimized, it all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Brady Thornton was going to prison. Lucas exhaled beside me, a long, shaky breath that sounded almost like a sob. "One down. One to go." I said, my eyes already shifting to the second monitor. On the screen, a police cruiser pulled up outside Evelyn's apartment building, a modern complex in a trendy neighborhood, all glass balconies and designer landscaping. Two officers got out their movements, deliberate and unhurried. They knew what they were doing. They'd done this hundreds of times before. But for me, watching my daughter about to be arrested, it felt like the first time. It felt like the world was ending. My heart pounded as they walked up the stairs to the third floor, their footsteps echoing in the concrete stairwell. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was watch as they approached her door and knocked 3 sharp, authoritative raps that echoed through the hallway. Evelyn opened it almost immediately, still dressed in the blazer she'd worn to my house that morning. Her expression shifted from mild annoyance, probably thinking it was a package delivery or a neighbor complaining about noise, to genuine alarm as she saw the uniforms, the badges, the grim expressions. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Evelyn Hawthorne," one of the officers said. "Yes. You're under arrest for elder abuse, financial exploitation, extortion, and conspiracy to commit fraud." For a moment, Evelyn just stared at him, as if the words didn't make sense. Then her face twisted with anger and disbelief. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice rising. "My father is senile. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's confused. He needs help, not—" "We have a recording of your conversation this morning, ma'am," the officer interrupted calmly. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Evelyn's face went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "You had him wired," she whispered, more to herself than to the officers. The officer didn't answer. He just turned her around gently but firmly and pulled her wrists behind her back. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. And then I heard it, a small, frightened voice from inside the apartment. "Daddy." Lucas shot to his feet so fast he nearly hit his head on the low ceiling of the van. "Clara!" Torres was already nodding. "Go." Lucas was out of the van before I could say a word, sprinting across the parking lot toward the apartment building. I watched on the monitor as he took the stairs 2 at a time, his face desperate, and burst into the apartment where Clara stood in the living room, her eyes wide and frightened, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy!" she cried, running to him. Lucas scooped her up and held her tight, burying his face in her hair. His whole body shook. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now. I've got you." "Why are they taking that lady away?" Clara asked, her voice small and confused. "It's okay," Lucas said, his voice breaking. "You're coming home with me. Everything's going to be okay." A week after the arrests, the house felt different, quieter, emptier. The silence wasn't the comfortable kind I'd grown accustomed to over the past 3 years since Marianne died. This was heavier, more oppressive, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to break. I spent hours going through old photo albums, studying pictures of Evelyn as a child, trying to understand where I had lost her. There she was at 5 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a finger painting she'd made at kindergarten. At 9, standing beside Marianne in the garden, both of them covered in dirt and laughing. At 13, awkward and beautiful at her first school dance, her hand tucked nervously into mine as we posed for the camera. When had that girl disappeared? When had she become someone capable of such calculated cruelty? I turned the pages slowly, my fingers tracing the edges of photographs that felt like artifacts from another life. Evelyn blowing out birthday candles. Evelyn graduating high school. Evelyn and Marianne baking cookies together, flour dusted across their noses. Every image was a reminder of what we'd been and what we'd lost. The doorbell rang at 10 in the morning, pulling me from my reverie. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment I considered not answering, just sitting in the study with my ghosts and my regrets. But something made me stand up and walk to the door. When I opened it, Lucas stood there with Clara beside him. "I hope this is okay," Lucas said, his voice tentative. "Clara wanted to see you." I looked down at the little girl in a yellow dress clutching a stuffed rabbit that looked well-loved and slightly threadbare. Her dark hair was pulled into a ponytail with a yellow ribbon that matched her dress and her eyes, Mary Ann's eyes. That particular shade of hazel that changed with the light looked up at me with cautious curiosity. "Grandpa Edmund," she asked, her voice small and hopeful. The word broke something open inside me. All the grief I'd been holding back, all the loss and regret and desperate hope. It came flooding out in that single moment. I knelt down slowly, my knees protesting my vision, blurring with tears I couldn't hold back. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my voice rough. "That's me." Clara stepped forward carefully, as if approaching a wild animal that might startle. Then she wrapped her small arms around my neck and held on tight. I held her back, feeling 7 lost years collapse into that single embrace. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and sunshine, and her heartbeat was quick and steady against my chest. "Why are you crying?" she asked, pulling back to study my face with concern. "Because I'm happy," I said softly, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. "Because I finally get to meet you, really meet you." Lucas cleared his throat above us, and I could hear the emotion in it. "Can we come in?" "Of course," I said, standing and gesturing them inside. "Please." We sat in the living room, where I'd confronted Evelyn just days earlier. The room still carried the echo of that terrible conversation, her cold demands, my desperate attempts to reach some part of the daughter I remembered. But now Clara sat beside me on the couch, swinging her legs because they were too short to reach the floor, and the room felt different, lighter somehow. She looked around with wide eyes, taking in the high ceilings, the family photographs on the mantel, the big windows overlooking the garden, where Mary Ann had spent so many happy hours. "This house is really big," Clara said, her voice filled with wonder. "It is," I replied, thinking of how empty it had felt for so long. "It used to feel full." She tilted her head, considering this. "You should get a dog," she said seriously, as if this were the obvious solution to all problems. "Dogs make houses feel full, and they're good for sad people." Lucas smiled, and I saw the love in his eyes as he looked at his daughter. That's her answer to everything. I laughed for the first time in weeks, a real laugh that came from somewhere deep inside, breaking through the layers of pain and worry. "Maybe I will," I said, imagining a dog running through these empty rooms, Clara chasing after it during visits. Clara studied me with the intense focus that only children possess, as if she could see straight through to my soul. "Daddy says you're my real grandpa." "That's true," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. "And Evelyn," she paused, testing the name carefully. "She's my mom." "Yes." The room fell quiet. Lucas tensed slightly, ready to intervene if needed, but Clara's expression remained thoughtful rather than upset. "Why did she leave me?" Clara asked finally. It wasn't accusatory or angry, just a simple question from a child trying to understand her world. I glanced at Lucas. He nodded, giving me permission to answer honestly within appropriate boundaries. "Sometimes grown-ups make big mistakes," I said, carefully choosing each word with care. "Your mom wasn't ready to be a mother when you were born. She was scared and confused. So your dad raised you and he's done a wonderful job." Clara shook her head firmly, her ponytail swinging. "That's not a mistake," she said, with the brutal honesty of childhood. "That's mean. Mistakes are like when you forget your homework or break a plate. Leaving a baby isn't a mistake." Her words hit me like a punch. She was right, of course. Children often saw things more clearly than adults, unclouded by justifications and rationalizations. "You're right," I said quietly. "And I'm sorry. I'm sorry you didn't have your mother. I'm sorry I didn't know about you sooner." "Is she coming back?" Clara asked. "Not for a long time," I said honestly. Lucas and I had agreed not to lie to her even when the truth was painful. She thought for a moment, her small face serious. Then she looked up at me with those hazel eyes, Mary Ann's eyes, and asked, "Can I still call you Grandpa?" My throat tightened. "I'd like that very much." She smiled then, and it was like watching Mary Ann smile again, the same dimple in the left cheek, the same way her whole face lit up. It was a gift I hadn't expected, a connection to my wife that transcended death and time. "Okay, Grandpa," Clara said, testing the word and clearly liking it. Then she bounced off the couch. Can I see the garden Daddy said there might be butterflies? Of course, I said. Would you like me to show you? But Lucas stood up. How about I take her, give you two some time to talk? He understood I needed a moment to collect myself to process the overwhelming emotion of finally meeting my granddaughter. After Clara went outside with Lucas to explore the garden, I stood at the window watching them. Lucas pointed at something in the flower beds, probably the last of the late summer blooms, and Clara crouched down to look her yellow dress bright against the green grass. She looked so small out there, so vulnerable, and I felt a fierce protective instinct surge through me. My phone rang, breaking the moment. Special Agent Torres. And the trial date's set, he said without preamble. November 15th. That's soon, I said, calculating. Less than 2 months. The evidence is strong, Torres explained. The prosecution wants to move quickly. Evelyn's charged with elder abuse, financial exploitation, extortion, and conspiracy. Brady Thornton is charged with fraud, practicing medicine without a license, and conspiracy. Given the recording, the paper trail, and Brady's willingness to testify against Evelyn in exchange for a reduced sentence, this should be straightforward. Evelyn could face 5 to 10 years. I closed my eyes, leaning against the window frame. 5 to 10 years. My daughter would be in her 40s when she got out. Clara would be a teenager. So much life would pass while Evelyn sat in a cell. And Clara? I asked, watching her chase a butterfly through the garden. Lucas filed to terminate Evelyn's parental rights last week, Torres said. Given her abandonment 7 years ago, the fraud charges, and her attempt to use Clara as leverage, the judge will likely approve it. Lucas will have full legal custody. Evelyn will have no claim to Clara. That's good, I said, meaning it. Clara deserves stability, not a mother who appeared and disappeared on a whim. Are you okay? Torres asked, and I heard genuine concern in his voice. I wasn't sure how to answer. My daughter was in jail awaiting trial. My wife was gone. My family was fractured in ways that might never heal. But through the window, I could see Clara laughing, as Lucas lifted her up to see a bird's nest in the oak tree, and I could feel something shifting inside me, not healing exactly, but maybe the beginning of it. I will be, I said finally. That evening after Lucas and Clara left, Clara hugging me tight and promising to visit again soon, I sat at my desk and took out a piece of stationery. I'd been thinking about this all week, composing the letter in my head during sleepless nights. I began to write, my hand steady despite the emotion behind the words. Dear Evelyn, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to say what I should have said long ago. The courtroom was packed on November 15th. Every seat in the gallery was filled, reporters with notepads, curious onlookers drawn by the sensational nature of the case, and a handful of people I recognized from the neighborhood. I sat in the front row beside Lucas, my hands folded in my lap, trying to maintain the composure I'd spent 70 years cultivating in boardrooms and business negotiations. But this wasn't business. This was my daughter's life, unraveling in public view. The air was thick with tension and the faint smell of old wood polish. The courtroom itself was intimidating: high ceilings, dark paneling, the American flag and state flag flanking the judge's bench like silent sentries. Everything about the space was designed to convey the weight and solemnity of justice. When they led Evelyn in, I felt my breath catch. She wore a navy blazer over a white blouse, an outfit that looked professional, almost businesslike, probably chosen by her attorney to make her appear sympathetic and responsible. But her face told a different story. It was pale and drawn, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. She kept her gaze fixed on the floor as she walked to the defense table, her movements stiff and mechanical, as if she were sleepwalking through a nightmare. She didn't look at me once, not when she entered, not when she sat down, not during the entire proceeding. I don't know if that was on her attorney's advice or her own choice, but the deliberate avoidance cut deeper than any words could have. Brady Thornton sat at his own defense table on the other side of the courtroom, separated from Evelyn by 20 feet of empty space that might as well have been a canyon. His attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s with steel-gray hair, sat beside him, whispering occasionally in his ear. Brady's expression was carefully neutral, almost bored, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed restlessly against the wood of the table. He was nervous, and he should be. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The prosecutor was a man named Richard Chen, mid-30s, thorough, methodical. I'd met him twice before the trial to go over my testimony. He'd impressed me with his attention to detail and his genuine outrage at what had been done to me, and to the other families Brady had victimized. Now standing before the jury, he presented the evidence methodically, piece by damning piece. First came the recordings my voice and Evelyn's crystal, clear through the courtroom speakers. Hearing her threaten to take Clara and disappear. Hearing her demand, I sign over power of attorney. Hearing the cold calculation in her voice as she described how she'd make me look incompetent. It was like listening to a stranger. The jury sat transfixed, some of them, taking notes, others just staring at Evelyn with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Then the bank statements projected onto a large screen for everyone to see. Chen walked the jury through each unauthorized transfer, each stolen payment, the systematic draining of my accounts over months. The numbers were stark and undeniable, $85,000 taken, while I'd trusted her implicitly. Brady's fraudulent credentials came next. Chen had done his homework, presenting not just the absence of legitimate licensing, but evidence of Brady's pattern the other families he had targeted. The other elderly victims who'd been declared incompetent based on his fabricated evaluations. 4 families before mine, 4 lives disrupted, 4 people who'd surrendered control rather than fight. The fake psychiatric evaluation that Brady had created for me was particularly damning. Chen called an actual psychiatrist as an expert witness doctor. Elizabeth Moore, a respected clinician with 30 years of experience. She took the stand and methodically dismantled Brady's evaluation, pointing out inconsistencies, professional terminology used incorrectly, diagnostic criteria that didn't align with actual medical standards. At this document, Dr. Moore said, holding up the evaluation with something like distaste, is not just unprofessional, it's fraudulent. No legitimate practitioner would produce something like this. It's designed not to diagnose, but to deceive. Evelyn's attorney, a public defender named Michael Warren, who looked tired and overworked, tried to argue that she'd been acting out of misguided concern for my well-being, that she genuinely believed I was declining mentally, that her actions, while perhaps legally questionable, came from a place of love and worry. Ms. Hawthorne was trying to protect her father, Warren said earnestly, addressing the jury. She saw signs of confusion, memory loss, behavior that concerned her. She made poor choices in how she addressed those concerns, but her intentions were to ensure her father's safety and security. The judge, the Honorable Patricia Williams, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, wasn't convinced. She'd reviewed all the evidence in chambers before the trial. She knew about the drugging, the theft, the threats. When Warren tried to paint Evelyn as a concerned daughter, Judge Williams interrupted. "Counselor," she said, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. "The evidence shows systematic financial exploitation, the administration of medication without consent, and the use of a minor child as leverage. Those are not the actions of someone concerned for a parent's welfare. Those are the actions of someone engaged in elder abuse. Please confine your arguments to the actual facts of the case." Warren sat down deflated. He knew he was fighting a losing battle. Then came the moment that sealed everything. Brady Thornton took the stand. His attorney had argued against it, but Brady insisted. He thought he could charm the jury, convince them he'd been manipulated by Evelyn. Instead, under Chen's methodical cross-examination, he threw Evelyn under the bus without hesitation. "Did you create a psychiatric evaluation for Edmund Hawthorne?" Chen asked. "Yes," Brady said. "Were you licensed to do so?" "No." "Did you have any medical training that qualified you to make such an evaluation?" "Not formally, no." "Then why did you create it?" Brady shifted in his seat. "I was paid to." "Paid by whom?" "Evelyn Hawthorne." The courtroom murmured. Judge Williams banged her gavel, once restoring order. Chen continued. "And what did Ms. Hawthorne tell you when she hired you?" "She told me her father was becoming incompetent, that he needed to be placed under conservatorship. She asked me to create documentation that would support that." "Did she tell you exactly what to write?" Brady hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. She gave me specific symptoms to include specific language to use. She wanted it to look professional and legitimate." "And you agreed?" "Yes." "For how much money?" $15,000. The number hung in the air. $15,000 to destroy my life, to strip away my autonomy, to make me look incompetent. It seemed both enormous and impossibly small. Chen nodded. No further questions. I glanced at Evelyn. Her face had crumpled, her carefully maintained composure finally breaking. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, but she made no sound. Her attorney leaned over to whisper something to her, but she didn't respond. She just sat there crying soundlessly as the full weight of what she'd done crashed down on her. When the verdict came, it was swift. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, a clear indication of how overwhelming the evidence was. Guilty on all counts, both of them. Judge Williams read the verdicts aloud, her voice steady and unemotional. Count 1, elder abuse, guilty. Count 2, financial exploitation, guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to commit fraud, guilty. Count 4, extortion, guilty. With each word, Evelyn seemed to shrink further into herself. Then came sentencing. Judge Williams didn't hesitate. She'd clearly given this considerable thought. "Ms. Hawthorne," she said, addressing Evelyn directly, "you systematically exploited your father's trust and vulnerability. You drugged him, stole from him, and attempted to have him declared incompetent for your own financial gain. You used your own daughter as leverage. Your actions constitute some of the most egregious elder abuse this court has seen. I hereby sentence you to 7 years in state prison." Evelyn collapsed into her chair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Judge Williams turned to Brady. "Mr. Thornton, you made a career of victimizing vulnerable elderly individuals. You created false medical documents, impersonated a licensed professional, and caused immeasurable harm to multiple families. Your cooperation with the prosecution warrants some consideration, but your actions cannot be excused. I hereby sentence you to 10 years in state prison." Brady's carefully neutral expression finally cracked. His face went white. The bailiffs moved forward to take them both into custody. Evelyn stood unsteadily, and for just a moment, she looked back at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I saw pain there, and regret, and something that might have been a plea for understanding. I didn't look away, but I didn't offer absolution either. Then they let her out, and she was gone. I watched her, my daughter, my only child, the little girl who used to hold my hand and believe I could fix anything, being led away in handcuffs. And I felt something break inside me that I knew would never fully heal. Not because I still loved her, I did despite everything, but because I finally understood that love alone wasn't enough to save someone who didn't want to be saved. Lucas's hand landed on my shoulder, steady and warm. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." We stood and walked out of the courtroom together, past the reporters shouting questions, past the curious onlookers, into the cold November afternoon. The sky was gray and heavy with the promise of rain, but somehow the air felt cleaner than it had in months. Evelyn had made her choices. Now she would live with the consequences. And I would figure out how to move forward for myself, for Clara, for the family we were building, from the ashes of the one that had burned down. And to you listening to this story, I want to share something I've learned through the hardest season of my life. This family story isn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who's ever felt betrayed by someone they trusted. Anyone who's watched family betrayal tear apart the people they love most. Anyone who's had to choose between bitterness and grace when grace felt impossible. When I stood in the rain on my 70th birthday, broken and alone, believing I'd lost everything that mattered, I didn't understand that God was already working. He had a plan. I couldn't see a purpose hidden in the pain. He sent me Lucas and Clara that night, not by accident, but by divine appointment. Through them, God showed me that redemption is always possible, even when we think we've gone too far, even when the damage feels irreparable. I believe with all my heart that God doesn't waste our suffering. He uses it to refine us, to redirect us, to rebuild us into something stronger and more compassionate than we were before. This isn't just a family story about betrayal and justice. It's a story about second chances. It's about choosing love over bitterness, even when bitterness feels completely justified. Because at the end of the day, what good is revenge if it leaves you empty inside? What good is winning if you've lost your soul in the process? I thought seeing Evelyn arrested and sentenced would bring me peace, that justice would somehow heal the wound she'd opened. But standing in that courtroom, watching my daughter sentenced to 7 years in prison, watching her collapse under the weight of her own choices, I realized something profound. Revenge doesn't heal. Only forgiveness does. And forgiveness isn't something you do once and move on. It's something you choose every single day, sometimes every single hour, until it becomes woven into the fabric of who you are. Don't be like I was. Don't let grief blind you to the people standing right in front of you who need you. After Mary Ann died, I was so consumed by my own pain that I couldn't see Evelyn's. I was so wrapped up in my loss that I failed to notice my daughter was drowning. That failure created a wound in her that festered for years, eventually becoming the infection that poisoned everything. If I could go back, I would sit with her in that grief. I would ask her how she was feeling instead of assuming she was fine. I would prioritize her healing alongside my own. But I can't go back. None of us can. All we can do is learn from our mistakes and refuse to repeat them. Don't let anger steal the years you could spend building something beautiful. Anger is seductive. It feels righteous and justified. It gives you energy when grief wants to paralyze you. But anger is also corrosive. It eats away at your capacity for joy, for connection, for hope. I spent months angry at Evelyn, furious at her betrayal, her manipulation, her willingness to destroy me, to protect her secrets. That anger was legitimate. But if I'd held onto it, if I'd let it define me, I would have missed the chance to know Clara. I would have missed the friendship with Lucas. I would have missed the opportunity to be the grandfather I never got to be and the father I should have been all along. Life is short, my friends. Shorter than we ever imagine when we're young and convinced we have endless time. The people we love, even when they hurt us, even when they make catastrophic choices, even when reconciliation seems impossible, are worth fighting for. Not fighting to control them, or fix them, or force them to be who we want them to be, but fighting to remain open, to remain available, to remain willing to extend grace when they're finally ready to receive it. God gave me Clara when I thought I had nothing left to live for. He gave me a 7-year-old child with dark hair and hazel eyes, and a smile that brought my wife back to life in my memory. Clara didn't just give me a reason to keep going. She gave me a chance to do things differently, to be present in ways I hadn't been with Evelyn, to build a relationship based on love and attention and genuine presence. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Every moment with Clara is a gift I don't deserve, but accept with profound humility. If you're listening to this and thinking about your own family story, I want to ask you something. Is there someone you've given up on, someone you've written off as too broken, too far gone, too difficult to love? Because I promise you they're not. None of us are beyond redemption. We're all just broken people trying to find our way home, trying to make sense of our wounds, trying to figure out how to love and be loved despite all the ways we've been hurt and all the ways we've hurt others. And sometimes home isn't a place you return to. Sometimes home is something you have to build from scratch. One conversation at a time, one visit at a time, one act of grace at a time. I still visit Evelyn every month. Our conversations are difficult. There's so much pain between us, so much betrayal and disappointment and grief. But I keep showing up because that's what fathers do. That's what love does. It shows up even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when there's no guarantee of reconciliation or healing. I show up because I believe God isn't finished with Evelyn yet. I believe that 7 years in prison could be the beginning of her transformation, not the end of her story. And I want to be there when she's ready to take those first tentative steps toward becoming the person she was meant to be. Here's my advice drawn from the hardest lessons I've ever learned. Don't wait. Don't assume you have time. Don't let pride or pain or fear keep you from reaching out to the people you love. Because one day you'll stand in the rain like I did, and you'll realize that all the money in the world, all the professional success, all the vindication and justice and revenge mean absolutely nothing if you're standing there alone. What matters is connection. What matters is love. What matters is being present for the people who need you and allowing them to be present for you. This family betrayal nearly destroyed me. It cost me my sense of security. My relationship with my daughter, years of peace I'll never get back. But it also gave me Clara. It gave me Lucas. It showed me the depth of God's faithfulness even when everything else was falling apart. And it taught me that healing is possible, that love is stronger than betrayal, and that it's never too late to start again. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you faced family betrayal that tested everything you believed about love and loyalty? Have you had to choose between revenge and redemption? Share your story, because vulnerability creates connection, and your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Your experience matters. Your healing matters. And you never know who might be encouraged by your courage to keep going. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. These family stories matter because they remind us we're not alone in our struggles. They show us that healing is possible, that transformation is real, and that love, real stubborn, never giving up love, is always worth it. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. It truly means more than you know. Your time is valuable, and I'm honored you spent this time with me. Before you go, I want to offer a gentle but important reminder. The stories shared on this channel include fictional elements thoughtfully crafted for educational and inspirational purposes. If that type of content doesn't resonate with you or align with what you're looking for, I completely understand, and I encourage you to explore other videos that might be a better fit for your preferences. But if you're ready to hear more stories about faith family, the power of forgiveness, and the possibility of second chances, then stay tuned, because there's so much more to come. God bless you wherever you are in your journey, and remember, it's never too late to start again. It's never too late to choose love. It's never too late to become the person God created you to be. Grace is always available. Hope is always possible. And redemption is always within reach.